And I am really looking forward to our next interview. And by the way, coming up in about an hour or so, we will have On the Nose. We'll answer your questions, a ton of questions already over on the Substack page. A lot going on post 303, going into the weekend, all kinds of news going on in the world of combat sports. So stay tuned for that. But for now, an interview that I've been trying to secure for about 4 years' time. And it's finally time to make it happen, my friends. The co-founder of Most Valuable Promotions, the one and only Nakisa Bidarian. Is he here? Ah, yes, he is. Wow. I didn't believe this was actually going to happen. How are you, my friend?
Good.
It's good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Wow,
Thank you
please.
for having me.
Yes, have a seat. Look at you. Drinking a little Celsius there.
Always, always.
Welcome. Move your
Thank
chair
you.
a little bit up. I don't know what they're trying to do. We're trying to make Nakisa look bad here. Okay, that's better. That's better. Yeah, I like it. I didn't think this day would ever happen.
Well, I'm glad it's happening.
Yes, I'm glad too. Why is it happening now? Because Lord knows I've asked you a million times. Why is now the right time to speak?
I think it's a great time because we have a big fight coming up with Jake and Mike Perry. And it felt like it was a good moment to sit down with you and talk about that and the future of MVP and Jake Paul.
Okay. I love that. So let us start there because I wanted to, I mean, you've done a lot in your life and career. Obviously, the days in the UFC and post-UFC and now with Jake. July 20th was supposed to be a huge night for you and for Jake and for the company. Obviously, the Netflix fight, Mike Tyson, it didn't go down. When you found out that was falling through, there was a period there, right, where the fight fell through, and before you announced the Mike Perry fight, what was that moment like when you found out this massive moment that you had worked so hard to put together was actually not going to come to fruition?
I think we were prepared for it. We always expected the unknown to happen in the fight game, and particularly in this scenario where we had 6 months of lead time to fight night, or 4 months, I should say, at that point in time. Injuries are a common part of this sport, right? Conor McGregor, massive comeback after 3 years, gets postponed. Right. So it wasn't a shock to the system. It was certainly not ideal, but you roll with it and you focus on what's next.
Is there like a state of depression in that moment?
No.
None of that?
No, there's a state of never count on everything happening as you planned, and reassess and re-strategize and refocus on what's next.
How did Jake take the news?
I think at first he was like, no, this can't be the case. This can't be the case. And then eventually it was just, reflection on what does he want to do next. And that's where we landed on. He wanted to fight July 20th and finding the right opponent to do so. And
so I think you got word around on a Thursday. The news came out on a Friday because I remember where I was when I found out about it. How soon after hearing the news do you start looking at, okay, let's stay on the same day and who are we fighting? Like how soon do you pivot from, all right, we're done with this and now let's see how we salvage this date?
Gave Jake and Amanda a couple of days to digest and figure out what they wanted to do. And when they came to the conclusion that, yes, it's important to stay active, it was no fault of theirs that the fight was getting postponed. And then we started to think about what do we do for July 20th.
Okay, and how did we end up with Mike Perry?
That's who everybody wanted to begin with, right? Like when Mike Tyson was announced, especially the MMA community, I saw lots of, oh, it should be Mike Perry, not Mike Tyson. Jake's fighting the wrong Mike. This is the guy that could beat him. We talked to Mike over the past couple of years a few times around doing this fight, and it just never was the right time. And I actually think Mike Perry is like the perfect preparation for Mike Tyson. Other than Mike Tyson, Mike Perry will be the best opponent that Jake has ever faced. He's the most dangerous. He's obviously the youngest other than Tommy Fury. And it serves as an awesome test to see if he's ready to get in there with Mike Tyson.
Any part of you that says, because you, I believe my timeline is correct, you announced the November 15th date, the new date for Tyson Paul, before you announced this fight. So is there any part of you or Jake that was like, I know November 15th is what now, 4 months away at the time, maybe 5 months away?
At the time, 5 months away. Yeah. Fight night, 4 months away.
Let's just wait. Let's not tempt the gods. Remember what happened with Francis and Tyson, right? They announced the Usyk fight. Francis shows up, shocks the world, so to speak, and then they have to postpone. Was there any part of you that was like, you know what, maybe this is too big of a risk. Let's just wait, get the Tyson fight out of the way, and then we'll look at the Perrys of the world.
If it was 2 months, if it was 2.5 months, maybe. But from that moment to November 15th was pretty much 5 months. That's half a year. So, to wait on the hope that nothing changes between now and then just didn't make a lot of sense to us, assuming Jake wanted to fight.
Okay. And how did you, how did you do the dance between Netflix and DAZN? Because Tyson's on Netflix, this one's on DAZN. I still have some people coming up to me and saying, like, wait, is Perry on DAZN or Netflix? Like, so how did that work out? Can you peel behind the curtain?
We partnered with Netflix November 1st of last year.
Wow.
And
that's how long ago?
Yes. And then we focused on who's the right opponent, what's the right event. And when the postponement happened with Mike, we did talk to Netflix about potentially staying on the same date and doing another opponent. But I think we all felt like it was important for their entry into combat sports to do it in a massive cross-generational way, which is what Jake and Mike Tyson is. DAZN, thank God for DAZN in terms of boxing from my perspective. They are by far the most committed in the sport, right? Across every vertical of whatever the sport is. And they were very enthusiastic about putting on this fight.
So the deal with Netflix was November?
We signed it November 1st of last year, yes.
And was it just Jake fighting on Netflix or was Jake Tyson?
Jake fighting on Netflix and various potential opponents to look at.
When did Tyson get done?
Honestly, Tyson really happened because Mike and his team approached me to say, we'd like to fight Jake Paul. Here's an opportunity that we have. And I said, time out, let me come back to you on what opportunity we have, which I think makes a lot more sense.
Wow. And was that before 2024? Like, was that late 23?
Late 23.
Man, and you guys kept that under wraps.
Yeah, we did a good job in my mind of doing so.
And so if you came to an agreement of sorts with Netflix in November, he fought twice, Jake did. I know it wasn't against like world-class talent in many people's eyes, but there were two opportunities to slip on a banana peel, get an injury, tear a ligament, twist a knee.
Yeah, I mean, look, he fought more experienced boxers than most of the events that he's had to date. And so it was certainly risky in that regard, for sure. But we felt confident that he would prevail.
Was it nerve-wracking for you?
It wasn't nerve-wracking, no. I was always hopeful that the right thing would happen, and it did both times.
What do you say to people who say the Tyson fight should not happen?
Why?
Shouldn't have happened before and shouldn't happen now because of the pull-out? The age, the ulcer.
Also, anyone can get an ulcer, right?
Right.
And injuries, as I just said, look at Conor McGregor.
Right.
36 years old. He's been rehabbing for 3 years. The fight gets postponed. Mike Tyson and Jake Paul make sense because of the age, from my perspective. If Mike was in his early 30s, given Jake's experience, there's no sense to that fight. Age is the equalizing factor. When you look at Mike Tyson at age 27, he was 40-1. Jake Paul is 27, he's 9-1. Jake Paul's been a professional for 4 years. Mike Tyson at that point was a professional for, I think, 14 years. So what makes this fight exciting, what makes it real, is that there is a chance that either guy can lose. And if you actually talk to the vast majority of the public, if you look at the polls we've done, everyone thinks that Mike Tyson is going to knock out Jake Paul. So I think as long as he has a clean bill of health, which he did, and he will 100% will if we move forward with November 15th, which we plan to, then of course that fight should happen.
As far as your comfort initially signing up for this, he's 57, right, when you agree to it. Did you have to see something? Did you have to get documentation, tests, whatever, to feel comfortable about putting on a fight between someone who's 50? Forget about Tyson versus Jake. Just the idea of a 57-year-old fighting in a fight isn't common, right, in the world of combat sports. So did you have to reach a point of comfort as well? No,
absolutely. We went through the process of his full medicals and making sure his doctors gave him the clearances and then working with the commission to get to that point as well. So we felt comfortable. The rules are obviously 8 rounds, 2 minutes, and those 2 minutes are really to give Mike the chance to be as powerful and impactful as he can. Because, look, power doesn't go, but certainly stamina goes when you get older. That's clear, right? So it's how do you equalize the playing field in all regards?
How is he doing now?
He's doing great.
Okay.
And Jake is pissed because he sees Mike in Europe living life, doing appearances, celebrating his birthday. And he's like, I thought he was injured. Like, what's going on? And I talked to Team Tyson yesterday, and they said he's back, not doing boxing training, but doing strength and conditioning, feels great. So everything looks to be on track. But first, we got to get through Saturday, July 20th.
Sure. And the new date, by the way, is Friday, November 15th.
Yes.
Any particular reason why you chose a Friday?
Share a voice, right? That's football season. I've always been adamant that you don't really want to go against college football or the NFL to maximize eyeballs. And for us being on a Friday with Netflix makes a lot of sense.
Did you Like, did you announce how many tickets you had sold up until the point of the cancel?
Sold about 40,000.
40,000.
Yeah.
And everyone who bought tickets, is it just honored for the new date, or do they have to buy tickets again? How does that work?
Fully honored. Refunds were available for a period of time. I think we saw about 20% refunds, which makes sense. For some people, it just doesn't work. They were planning to travel there. They have other commitments. And we actually feel it's a better day from a ticket perspective because not a lot of people want to travel to Dallas in the summertime.
Right.
Here, we think it's a great weekend from that perspective.
What do you think you get as far as attendance?
75,000 people.
Wow, that much?
Yeah.
Dang. And could I ask the Jake Netflix deal, is it a one-off?
It's we want to be in business together for the long term.
Okay.
But obviously, if I'm Netflix, I would say let me do this first one, see how it performs, and then go from there.
When you agree to a deal with Mike Perry, do you have to tie in BKFC, or is he free to do whatever he wants?
Look, BKFC has been great with Mike. I think they've said this is an amazing opportunity for you, and Mike and his team were clear from day one that they had the ability to do this.
Okay, so no issues there.
No issues.
What do you say to people like me who bring up the weight difference? That Mike, typically fights at 75, 85. This is a 200-pound fight, right? A
Fights at
cruiserweight
85 in BKFC.
Yeah.
Just fought Luke Rockhold, who's as big a man as Jake Paul, and I think finished Luke Rockhold in the second round.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the weight difference is that vast versus the experience that he's had against bigger men. And I think it's a very dangerous fight for Jake, right? Because when you looked at the fight with Nate Diaz, you knew Nate Diaz wasn't a quitter, but he's not a big puncher. So you felt comfort in that, okay, this could go to distance, but the likelihood of him putting Jake down was lower than higher. Here with Mike Perry, he's a very dangerous opponent, right? You could say he's similar to Mike Tyson in many ways, that he'll take a punch to give a punch when Mike was younger. And he's nonstop, he's no quitting. And when you get very close to him, you're at risk. So yeah, I think it's gonna be a pretty fair fight.
And so,
and most MMA pundits, as you probably know, Daniel Cormier, Michael Bisping, go down the list, are saying this is a grave mistake for Jake Paul. Mike Perry's gonna win.
Are you nervous about it?
No, I believe in whatever's meant to happen is gonna happen. Obviously, we feel good about Jake's position within the fight, but you never truly know what happens come fight night.
And so, when we were gearing up for the Diaz fight around this time last year, right, in early August it happened, we thought maybe there'd be like a boxing MMA home and home type of thing, right? In the end, could that be Mike Perry?
Definitely.
Because you guys have a position with PFL.
Yes.
Your specific role is what for the public, on the board of?
Yeah, I'm an observer of the board.
Okay.
Jake and I have equity within the PFL, and we help them kind of look at overall strategy around pay-per-views and fighters in general.
Okay, so is there a chance? Is this something that's been discussed? That, like, if Jake wins and you do an MMA fight, if Mike wins and you do an MMA fight, like some sort of back-to-back here?
Yeah, I think if the fight makes sense, that's absolutely something that Jake would like to do, right? When I say makes sense, it means let's see how this one does, how it performs. And if there's appetite for that, Jake has said to me 100% he'd be down to do MMA with Mike Perry.
There are some people who are starting to believe Jake will never fight in MMA.
I'm one of those people too, because it just depends on how his career goes, right?
Because initially when the announcement came out, it seemed definitive, but it seemed like 24 was the year, right? I think it came out late 22, and then you said like not 23, but maybe 24.
We announced it early 23.
Early 23, okay.
Early 23. And look, his goal is to fight in MMA. Just everything needs to align for that to be the case. I think 2025 makes a lot of sense for that. It's just about having the right opponent. We've talked to, Nate Diaz multiple times. As you know, there's hurdles to that. We've talked to Tommy Fury about doing a boxing rematch, and the winner, if Jake was to win, we would do a trilogy within PFL. We'll definitely talk to Mike Perry depending on how this fight does. But right now, we're focused on July 20th.
Why didn't the Nate Diaz MMA fight happen?
I think the expectations of what was being asked from Team Diaz didn't align with reality in terms of compensation, coupled with the desire to be co-promoted with Real Fight, right? The opportunity is with PFL. The compensation that PFL was offering was, in my mind, more than fair if you actually believe, if you're Nate Diaz, that you're going to demolish Jake Paul within 5 rounds. So that was really what caused it to be paused.
All right, now back to the beginning of you and Jake. When did you first
Back
meet
to
him?
July 20th, man. Can we talk about July 20th?
We've been talking about July 20th for like 15 minutes.
No, we haven't.
What are you talking about?
No.
What more do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about Amanda Serrano.
Okay.
Right, taking this fight against a 14-0 fighter. Right.
Another risk.
Another risk. Amanda's going into her 50th fight. She hasn't fought since last October because, as you know, in March, her fight had to be canceled last minute. She's taken on Stevie Morgan, who's 14-0 with 13 knockouts. It's probably more knockouts than 99% of top 20 boxers within women boxers. So that we're very excited about. And then you think about H2O. He was supposed to fight Kid Austin, Floyd Schofield, on Netflix. Another top prospect. H2O is 11-0 with 9 knockouts. Floyd, I think, was 17-0. We were going to do the fight on this card. Floyd got injured. And H2O stepping up against Lucas Body, who is a Canadian like yourself.
Shout out.
16-0 with 14 knockouts. So excited about that for July 20th. And then you have Chavez Jr. coming back. And a lot of people were surprised when he was going to fight on Netflix against Darren Till. When that fell off, Chavez's team was very adamant that they wanted to continue to be in business with us. And he hasn't fought in 3 years, right? If you remember, he lost to Anderson Silva. What I love about this fight is he's fighting Uriah Hall, who knocked out Anderson Silva near the end of Anderson's career. So it's a great redemption opportunity for Chavez. And for Uriah, it's his chance to kind of make an impact on boxing. He fought for us almost 2 years ago, beat Le'Veon Bell, but I don't think he got the credit he deserved. As you look at Le'Veon's career and how it's progressed, this is really an interesting opportunity for him. And then we have Tony Aguilar, who's 12-0, taking on Corey Marksman, who's 9-0 in the opening of the pay-per-view. And plus, it's the return of Shadeja Green, who we invested in a year ago. She had a chance to become a unified champion. In December, she lost, and this is her first comeback. So we're excited. July 20th on DAZN pay-per-view, man. And I know you're going to be there, so excited to have you.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. The Darren Till situation is interesting because when the news came out about Hall and Chavez, I kept getting questions, why isn't it just Till and Chavez, right? And actually, I spoke to Till yesterday because he was telling me about this fight that he's on this weekend.
Yeah.
I believe it's called Social Knockouts.
Yeah. Shout out to Tam Khan, who's the head of Social Knockouts. Yes.
Yeah, and there's an irony there because like Till was the guy who was very outspoken about the influencer boxing scene.
What did he say?
Oh, he said, well, I asked him, is this true? Because I didn't know if it was a Photoshop. And I did ask him, why aren't you fighting Chavez? And he told me that it's a visa issue. And so is that accurate?
That is accurate. We were working to fix it. Obviously, with the postponement, we put a pause on it. And then when we got refocused on July 20th, timing just didn't make sense. So we'll readdress it with him, post July 20th and see if we can get it done.
For November 15th, potentially. Okay. And you also announced today Most Valuable Prospects card. So a lot of exciting things.
Yeah, but look, when we set up Most Valuable Promotions, there was 2 main objectives for Jake and I. One was bringing awareness to women's boxing, which I think we've done and we're going to continue to do. And we're going to triple down on that, I think. Like, women's boxing should be getting more attention, should be getting more investment. And what we've done with Amanda Serrano and what she's done over the past 2 years is demonstrative of that. And then giving young boxers an opportunity, right? Jake is fighting July 20th and then going to Paris to work with USA Boxing to bring awareness to those young boxers. So prospects is a big part of our strategy.
How hard was it to get the Taylor Serrano fight done?
This time around?
Well, I mean, in general, right? Like for July 20th, like just to make that fight happen without Eddie Hearn and Matchroom.
I think it always came down to what Katie wanted to do, right? I think Eddie and Matchroom were supportive of Katie. And to Katie and her team's credit, I think they saw this unique opportunity to be on this massive event. And I see a lot of comments that speak about, oh, the main event should be Taylor and Serrano. Do you want Taylor and Serrano to get the maximum exposure? Or do you want just pride and ego to say these are the 2 like prime career boxers and this should be the main event? I want as many people as possible to see how unbelievable these 2 boxers are. And that's done by being right before Jake Paul and Mike Tyson, where that's touching literally 6 different generations that 80% of probably don't know much about boxing. And they're going to get a chance to see these 2 women compete at the highest level. So it wasn't hard, time consuming, yes, but once Katie wanted it, and of course Amanda wanted it, we knew it would get done. And again, shout out to DAZN for being supportive of getting Katie off of platform to do this.
When did you first meet Jake Paul?
I met Jake Paul in October of 2019.
Where were you? Like, how did it all go
from
down?
a friend who was a music manager who said he's meeting with this guy named Jake Paul. And similar to UFC, I didn't know what UFC was when Abu Dhabi invested 10% of UFC when I used to work for an entity owned by the government of Abu Dhabi. I didn't know who Jake Paul was. I said, who is that? He said, he's a YouTuber. I said, what is that? He goes, the guy who creates YouTube content. And I'm meeting with him. He wants to be a rapper, an actor, and a boxer. And he has a boxing match coming up in January, February that he needs help on. So can you come meet with him? And I said, sure. Again, I don't know the guy, but I'll come and meet with him. That was my first meeting with Jake. And 3 things stood out. 1, he wanted to do a lot of different things, which was those things I just mentioned, plus be an entrepreneur. 2, he said to me that he wants to start a fighters union, particularly focused on UFC. And I remember my reaction at the time was, I have no interest in that. I know the UFC guys well. I'm not interested. And then 3 was that he actually had a platform, right? If you take out Brock Lesnar, maybe CM Punk, it's very rare in MMA or boxing for a fighter to come into the sport with built-in audience. It's not college basketball or football or baseball or even hockey where they're building audience before they get to the pro leagues. So that was like the aha moment for me that, okay, there's something special here if he's focused. And he definitely wasn't at that point from my perspective. So I helped him with that one fight, and then we kind of shook hands and moved away.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So that was for the Anton Gibb fight, right?
Yes.
In Miami.
Yes.
And so you were there.
I was there. So he had gotten an offer from Eddie Hearn in Matchroom.
Yeah.
Right? That was a Matchroom card. And ultimately, when I got involved, I connected with John Skipper, who was heading DAZN at the time, and negotiated a new deal for him to be on that card, which Amanda Serrano was also on that card on the prelims, non-TV, making, I think, like $15,000 or $20,000 as a champ.
And so then you said goodbye?
Effectively, yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Because he wasn't focused enough, and I didn't think it made sense for me to spend time on his boxing career at that point if he wasn't going to give it the proper amount of focus.
And how did he react when you said goodbye?
He was cool.
He was just like, peace out.
Yeah, I think he thought there was lots of opportunity and he was going to be successful. I remember he made a big Conor McGregor video after that, which again, I also said to him at the time, I said, I know Conor really well, respect him. Like, please don't be putting this stuff out. And he's like, who are you?
Right.
Like, we just met. Like, don't worry about it. I got this.
So how do you reconnect?
It all goes back to Mike Tyson. I got hit up to executive produce Tyson versus Jones, which was Tyson's comeback exhibition fight against Roy Jones Jr., which to date is still the biggest pay-per-view that's come out since that time period, right? So it speaks to the power of Mike Tyson, but also coupling him with a younger, social media-driven person like Jake Paul. So I called Jake and I said, I have an opportunity for you. I think it's pretty special, but you're going to get paid like 1/6 of what you got paid your first fight. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I said, here's the opportunity. You're going to be the co-main event. And I believe the world's going to be watching because we're in the middle of the pandemic and all eyes will be on this event and you can steal the show. And that's what happened. He stole the show. And on the back of that, I helped him do his next deal, which was an 8-figure deal to fight Ben Askren.
But at that point, MVP is a thing.
No.
By the time Ben Askren happens, it's not a thing yet.
No.
Okay.
No.
It's still Triller. You're just
still
fighting.
Triller, and I'm still just helping Jake
Okay.
ad hoc effectively in his career. And once we did the Triller deal for Ben Askren, on the back of that fight, we sat down and decided to partner together across his whole ecosystem.
Okay. And at this point, you feel like he's motivated? You feel like he's locked in?
I feel he's motivated. He wants to take boxing seriously. He understands the return that he can get from it. He's starting to fall in love with the sport truly, right? It's giving him purpose. It's giving him motivation. It's giving him discipline. We still had an issue of he was going at Conor McGregor and Dana White consistently. And I remember his comment to me at that point was, tell them I'm just a young, crazy guy and you can't control me. And that was really the start of our full-time relationship. We launched MVP in August of 2021.
Right. Tyron Woodley, Cleveland.
Yes.
The Showtime fight.
Exactly.
And so you're now you're like putting on the show.
Yeah.
Are you thinking to yourself like, what the hell did I get into? This is not, like in 2019 when you meet him, right? For your friend tells you, what are you doing in your life?
I had just sold my stake in Fertitta Capital back to Frank and Lorenzo Fertitta, who were the reason I ended up with UFC to begin with. And I was really reevaluating what I wanted to focus on, right? So my background started in consulting with Accenture. Went to undergrad in Canada. Shout out to the University of Waterloo.
Yeah.
Started with Accenture in management consulting. And then I went to grad school at Dartmouth, Tuck School of Business, and got onto Wall Street. Did mergers and acquisitions with Citigroup. And I think it was late 2006, I decided I wanted to move back to Dubai. Moved back to Dubai with Morgan Stanley, doing the same mergers and acquisitions, capital markets, and then got eventually recruited to go work for an entity owned by the government of Abu Dhabi. And I was focused on and responsible for real estate, hospitality, and gaming including casinos, not video games.
Okay.
I think January of 2010, I read an article that Abu Dhabi had invested 10% in something called UFC. I'd never heard of the UFC.
Never heard of it.
Never. Didn't know what it was.
What? Never saw a fight?
I watched boxing. I'm an avid basketball fan.
Yeah.
Crazy Laker fan. Grew up watching boxing, obviously, with the big fights, right? But I'd never heard of UFC. No
Okay.
clue. Read about it, said cool, moved on. And then maybe 6 months later, I got called in to meet Lorenzo Fertitta and Frank Fertitta. And that's really how my kind of exposure to
Meet for
UFC
what?
started. Looking at setting up an investment fund backed by that entity and the Fertittas to invest in sports, media, and entertainment. And from the collective perspective, whether it's a casino or UFC, whether it's a casino or basketball, in terms of consumers, it's all entertainment. So setting up a fund to invest within that landscape.
And so how do you go from that to being actually hired by the UFC?
I ended up leaving Abu Dhabi in September of 2011 to work with Lorenzo and Frank to set up this investment fund. And as I was going through that process, Lorenzo said, can we put this on hold? And can you come work with me at the UFC? We're growing like gangbusters around the globe. We have a lot of great people, but we don't have anyone with your background. And I think he actually liked the fact that I didn't know shit all about fighting. In reality, I think I'd been to 2 fights by that point. Maybe had met Dana White ad hoc once. And I started at UFC kind of full-time April of 2012 as head of strategy.
Head of strategy. You eventually become CFO.
Chief strategy officer and then chief financial officer.
And so
I will say for the record, I've never been an accountant. I took 2 accounting classes in undergrad and 2 accounting classes in grad school, but have never actually been an accountant, unfortunately. Though I think it's a very, very, very honorable profession.
Fair enough. You jump in there. So this is, you say 2012?
Yeah.
Like this is the beginning of the Fox deal. This is like the real explosion, right?
Yeah, this is really like going from being a tactical events company, which puts on massive, great events, to being a strategic media company that has a roster of talent and content that it monetizes on a continuous basis. And that was really my focus when I came in, is how do we go from being kind of short-term tactical episodic and being more long-term strategic in what we do.
This is the rise of Ronda, the rise of Conor. Like you're there for all of it.
I was, yeah. It was definitely
Was
an
it
exciting
wild?
time. Yeah, it was great. I think you mentioned Ronda. That was the best lesson I could have gotten in terms of treating women's sports equally to men's.
Mm-hmm.
And you can say a lot of things about UFC in terms of fighter pay and fighter treatment. And I'm very passionate about that now, looking back on it. But they have always treated women equally to men within that sport. Whoever drove the numbers got the pay, same rules, same opportunities. And that formed the basis of my belief that women in boxing should be treated the same.
When you were there, was there, you say you're passionate about fighter pay now, and obviously Jake has spoken a lot about it. Are there ever moments where you're like, it's not adding up?
I think there were moments of this could change over time and this profitability may change over time. That was definitely a discussion. It wasn't, to be completely honest, while there, I wasn't thinking this is not fair to fighters,
Okay.
right? It was more about, as an executive of the company, how do we protect this moat that we've created?
What about like unions and all that? Yeah, I remember there was Diaz McGregor 2. There was like a push for a union. One of the guys, Jeff Boris was sitting there at the press conference. You remember all that? Like,
Yeah.
And now this is a talking point, obviously, that Jake talks about a lot. Did you think that was a potential? I think we've never been further away from a union, to be honest, in the UFC. But did you think that was a?
I think we always thought it could happen, and I think a lot of people within the UFC at the time, at least, thought it might be a good thing because it helps kind of cultivate a real relationship with the talent that's contractual, and that the deliverables are very clearly outlined, and everyone's kind of rowing in the same direction together to maximize revenues for the benefit of the league or the promotion in this context, as well as the fighters.
I went back.
And I still believe that today, right? I still believe that if there was a more formal relationship with talent within combat sports, you're going to accrete more value.
You think it happens in our lifetime?
I think it's very hard, given that fighters are individually driven and the flow of information is limited. Is
Jake still concerned with this? Is he still 100%. Working on it?
He's always talking about it. He's always concerned about it. I think, it's something that he continues to try to cultivate. It does become complicated with the PFL relationship. We did, make a commitment with PFL that we would always have 50% of revenue within pay-per-views go to the fighters. So it's something that, of course, it's always top of mind, and we always try to do the best that we can. We give out a lot more than 50% of revenues to fighters, but every fight promoter does, with the exception of UFC. That's just the nature of the business, to be in business.
I went back and looked at the press release when it was announced that UFC was being sold to Endeavor. You're in there. I forget the wording, but it's like that you helped broker this. Like
I was the lead advisor
Yeah.
for UFC and the Fertittas, in addition to JP Morgan and Rain. But it was really something that I worked on for 2+ years with the support of Frank and Lorenzo and getting them the outcome that they wanted at the time.
Before going to where eventually it was sold, were there ever periods where it was close to going to someone else? There was always like a random, like a group in China, an Abu Dhabi group, a Fox group.
2014,
yeah,
there was almost a sale that happened.
Wow, to
didn't
who?
hit quite, didn't quite hit the level that Lorenzo and Frank wanted to achieve, and they felt like they should stay in. And 2016, when they decided to sell it, they get the mark that they wanted to hit.
4.025 billion, right?
Something like that, yeah.
What do you think it would go for now? Like, what do you think it should be valued at now? Because at the time, I'll be honest, I thought that was a crazy number. Now, obviously,
every sports entity's valuation has risen significantly. Look, now they're a public company, so their public valuation, you could say, is reflective of what the company is worth. I think, look, UFC is the greatest combat sports promotion that ever was, that is, and I think will be for a very long period of time. And that's why I'm hopeful at some point in time they'll bring in the fighters to truly be their partners like other leagues do, because I think that will only benefit them in the long term.
So the sale was announced in July, and I think you stayed on until December of 2016, right?
That's right.
And then you went to work with Fertitta Capital?
I went and set up Fertitta Capital. The Fertittas committed a certain amount of capital for myself and the team to invest in media, entertainment, and sports, with the expectation that over time we would bring in third-party capital, so other investors would come in.
Okay.
And it got to a point after about 2 years where there was a misalignment in terms of that vision, meaning Frank and Lorenzo Fertitta wanted to keep the capital in-house, captive to their family, and I wanted to bring in third-party capital, and that's where we decided to part ways.
Was it amicable?
100%.
Okay, so it wasn't like you guys were butting heads. It just felt like a fork in the road.
No, it was just strategically what I wanted in terms of my path forward, and what they wanted, and rightfully so, for themselves were different. So it just made sense to part ways at that point.
And could I ask, like, when you were with the UFC, what was your relationship like with Dana?
I think, look, I respect Dana for the impact he's had on fight sports, right? And you have to commend his ability to control the narrative at UFC and with the fighters. I would say Dana and I had an up and down relationship, which I don't think is different to a lot of relationships he had with executives at UFC during that period of time. I've always been outspoken in my beliefs and not afraid to present what we think is the right path forward strategically to do things. And you have to remember, I wasn't hired by Dana White. I didn't interview with Dana White to come into the UFC. You could argue that he was a proponent of me leaving the UFC, absolutely, for many different reasons. But we had an amicable relationship for most of the time that I was there.
Is it hard? Like, not to beat around the bush, but like he has sometimes talked about you and has made it personal. You don't speak. You don't respond.
Yeah.
Usually Jake will sometimes respond about things he said. But like, is it hard for you as someone who's always been in the background? You're not a front-facing guy, right? You're the CFO of the company. Is it hard for you to just kind of bite your tongue or not respond or just to look at this?
I don't see the gain in it, right? I think if I look at the history of it, in 2021, Jake was making content and poking Dana White.
Mm-hmm.
Jake is 24 years old. Now Dana, who I forget how old he is in 2021, very accomplished businessman, is then starting to attack Jake Paul. So I thought, okay, this is good back and forth. Go back to Ben Askren, who Dana and Ben Askren had no relationship. As soon as it was announced Ben Askren was fighting Jake Paul, Dana helped Ben Askren get with Freddie Roach. Freddie Roach started training Ben Askren. Freddie Roach made the statement that Ben Askren is going to make Jake Paul the biggest meme in fight sports history. I remember Dana went on some podcast and said he's going to bet $1 million that Jake is going to lose. And Jake didn't lose, Jake won. And then fast forward to Tyron Woodley. He beat Tyron Woodley in the first fight. Dana came out and said the fight is rigged. And I started to really think about like, what is the purpose of knocking down this young man? I understand he's making content poking you, but like, why do you want to break him with misinformation effectively, right? Like the fight is fixed, really? And then it came to the second Tyron Woodley fight, and he came out and said, Jake Paul's using steroids. And that was really the moment where I went to Jake and I said, okay, like now I'm on your side and you're passionate about fighter pay. I'm going to support that effort and I'm going to educate you more on fighter pay and let's start to be a little bit more public with that. And that's really the point where Dana attacked me because I think he understood pretty clearly that I had helped Jake understand the fighter pay ecosystem.
And is that tough for you to not respond? As like, you have pride and now all of a sudden.
I'm a private person.
Okay.
I'm focused on my family. Dana White can talk about me all he wants. It's okay with me. He can say as many lies as he wants.
It has subsided though.
It has. Yeah, look, he's been making the rounds now. I saw the last one talking about, I think it was Shannon Sharp about Showtime boxing is out of business because of Jake Paul. Blatant lie, right? But yeah, generally it's subsided, yes.
When I announced that you were coming on today, I thought a lot of the comments would be like, oh, ask about Dana, ask about Dana. That wasn't actually the case. That's more, for my, interests and the MMA audience. You know what the number one question was, right? You have no idea.
No.
Every single question was, ask him why the KSI fight isn't happening. Ask him, are you going to ask him? Are you going to ask him? Are you going to ask him?
Well,
of course
you're on social media and yeah, the fans obviously for
Why
Jake
isn't
and
it
KSI.
happening?
I don't think it's not happening. I think it's a matter of, does it happen? When does it happen?
Why hasn't it happened up until this point?
I don't think they've been realistic in what the fight is. I don't think they've really negotiated fairly in private. Again, I don't negotiate in public. We've never, made out to try to put them down. Jake and KSI going back and forth with each other, totally cool. Two fighters, two content creators, do your thing. When his representation is constantly taking a public position on Jake Paul, on MVP, on myself, it's just not who I want to do business with. It's not who Jake wants to do business with. Jake Paul, KSI is a great fight. I think it's an exciting fight. But it's going to be on terms that make sense in the background between ourselves, DAZN, and Wasserman.
Can it happen?
I think it definitely can happen, yes. But does Jake need it to happen? Absolutely not. Does KSI need it to happen? Absolutely not, right?
Will it happen?
I'm hopeful it does.
Yeah?
Definitely.
Oh, that's great news. I want this fight. I think we all want this fight. There's just so much tension there, and there's such a build. It's like I remember the Anton Gibb fight. You're sitting in the front row, right?
Yeah.
And you're talking to him.
I'm talking to him because the whole background on that fight was, okay, Jake Paul, you want to fight me, beat my guy first.
Yeah.
And he demolished that guy. And KSI didn't even want to go in the ring to face off with Jake. So it's never been a function of Jake not wanting to fight KSI. KSI has not wanted to fight Jake at different moments when Jake was ready.
So is there anything precluding it from happening?
I think the biggest thing is weight, right?
Oh.
That coming to an agreement on that. And Jake's never been more comfortable than he is at cruiserweight. I think too often in crossover, people have gotten fascinated with a specific weight, right? And cruiserweight's the perfect weight. It's 176 pounds to 200 pounds. You can weigh 177, you can weigh 200. You can weigh 199, you can weigh 198. That weight makes sense to Jake, and if we're ever gonna do it, that's how we're gonna do it at.
Okay, so he could come in at 85, you wouldn't care. Are you saying they're saying like we don't want it above a certain weight, and that's been the issue?
That's been a discussion in the past.
Yeah,
absolutely. And my view is, Jake Paul has grown as a man. Like
right.
I think KSI is 31, 32 years old. Jake Paul just turned 27. His body has been forming right into an adult, and as a man, he walks around at 210 pounds. So he and his coaches believe the best weight for him is at cruiserweight. Whether that's 195, 199, 200, depends on, I guess, the camp that he's in and what they're doing specifically, but he's gonna fight at cruiserweight.
Do you agree with me when I say like this could sell out Wembley, this could sell out Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, like this could be a gigantic mega event?
I think it could sell out MSG, it could sell out, venues in the US.
Would you prefer to be in the US?
100%.
Okay.
100% would prefer to be in the US. And look, the truth is, and you can look at any statistic, Jake is a relevant entity in the UK. KSI is not as big as Jake is in the UK, in the US, right? And I think there's a lot to be gained in terms of doing the fight here in the most important pay-per-view market in the world. Every 3 pay-per-view buys in the UK are equal to 1 in the US. So I want that fight in the US.
But he's a gigantic deal in the UK. Still, it would be bigger here as opposed to there.
I think if you take it to the UK, you significantly hurt the US.
Okay.
If you have it in the US, you still have great upside in the UK.
Is there a chance it's next after the Perry Tyson? Like, could it be in 25?
I don't think that's a focus for Jake. I think there's much bigger fights that he's focused on from his perspective. Don't ask me what those are.
Oh, I was just about to ask you.
But whether it's financially or motivationally, right? Like he does want to fight Tommy Fury again at some point to make that right.
What interests you more?
Of what?
Fury or KSI?
100% Fury.
Really?
Of course. Of course.
I'd love
that.
to.
That really is about quote unquote legacy, right? Because that was the first young boxer he faced. And, I'm going to Puerto Rico next week to spend a week with him. That fight was the first fight ever that I didn't spend time with him before the fight.
Huh.
And I believe to this date he shouldn't have fought that fight, right?
What do you mean?
Because he was very sick.
Oh.
He found out 2 weeks before the fight that he was allergic to dust, and his entire camp was in Dubai. So never making that mistake again. He still put on a valiant effort that night. He definitely was drained weight-wise, hence why he didn't have the same energy, and hence why cruiserweight's the right weight for him. But that to me is a more important fight than KSI for sure.
Allergic to dust.
Yeah.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah.
Canelo, were you about to say Canelo? Did I cut you off there?
Canelo is definitely someone that he wants to fight.
Doable?
I think if Jake knocks out Mike Tyson, it's very doable.
What's more doable if he knocks out Mike Tyson, that or Conor?
Canelo.
You think so?
I don't think Conor has much to gain from fighting Jake Paul. Right? Like he's pretty wealthy.
Yeah.
It's a different sport.
So is Canelo though.
Right. But Jake has been disruptive in Canelo's sport.
Sure, fair.
And Jake may put down one of the most iconic boxers in history in Mike Tyson. So if I'm Canelo, I'd look at that and say, okay, now I'm going to teach this young man a lesson for hurting this legend within my sport. I don't know what Conor's motivation is.
He's talked some shit. He said some stuff, some personal.
Yeah, I think Conor is more likely to fight KSI than Jake Paul.
You think so?
Yeah, I think it's an easier fight for him.
I want that KSI fight. Can I help make it happen? Can I get everyone in a room?
Well, look, we're having good discussions with DAZN, and the plan is to work with Wasserman on it in a professional context.
Okay, so that's promising.
Always, yeah.
Okay, wow, all right. I've gone over the time allotted. I see Mike over there. He's giving me the look. I got to stick to 35 minutes. 35. You come all the way here. I want you to get your money's worth.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Thank you.
I want you to get. By the way, Bronny James. Everyone's getting a little crazy about this, don't you think? Like all these old guys being like, this is nepotism. You're a Laker fan. I just saw a clip today of Rob Parker of Fox Sports being like, this ruins the NBA. He's the 55th pick. Don't you think it's crazy that people are getting crazy about this? It's a cool moment.
I think it's a great moment for sports. I think nepotism is commonplace in all of sports, not just the NBA.
By the way, Jeannie Buss is the owner of the Lakers because her dad was the owner of the Lakers. Like, come on.
The league is going to benefit from Bronny James's involvement. He is a social media star. He's a talented basketball player. Summer league's ratings are going to go increase because of his involvement. Like there's nothing but upside here. So for anyone to be upset is just, it's kind of like being upset with Jake Paul, right?
Yeah.
Jake Paul is unequivocally the most successful fighter in history 4 years in. No one comes close. No one. You couldn't list one that comes close, including Brock Lesnar if you include his WWE career. 4 years in terms of what he's done in terms of box office, pay-per-view, impact, helping other boxers, because he had platform, he had awareness, and he's got the focus and discipline to drive with it. Bronny James has the same potential, man, to be really impactful within the sport globally. And I think he deserves the situation that he's in.
One more I'll ask you about. When the Tyson fight fell through and then all that stuff was going on Twitter between him and Logan, and I remember the interview with him and Logan, and there was that one interview, I forget which fight it was after, where Jake was like, I feel like you're not rooting for me, like you're trying to put me down, and then that was and some people were saying like that was pro wrestling fake stuff. I felt like, I have a brother, I felt like it was legit. They were airing out some grievances.
They have the utmost love for each other.
But there's always like a tit for tat tension, no?
Utmost love for each other, but there is a competitive nature between them, absolutely. There is an older brother, younger brother dynamic, always, right? And I do believe you'll see that fight at some point. And
really?
There is not 1 ounce of wrestling in it. It's 100% real.
You think it happens?
Yeah, I do.
Wow.
I do.
Sooner rather than later?
I think to be determined, right? Again, it's just about how things sequence and what makes sense. I think it's hard to predict in fight sports, any fight happening.
Sure.
When.
That feels like a Netflix event.
That feels like a massive global event no matter what, because it's two brothers putting it all on the line. So I think, it's a great event no matter what.
Was that close? Meaning, instead of going the Perry route, did you guys seriously consider that one? Was there serious talks?
We said to Netflix we could get the two of them to agree to do it on July 20th on Netflix.
And what happened?
I think Netflix saw it as a phenomenal, massive event with not enough run up to do it the right way.
Okay. So July 20th is going to be Jake Paul versus Platinum Perry, DAZN pay-per-view, Amanda Serrano on it. There, look, poster. How about that promotion?
There you go.
Yeah, by the way, fear no man.
Fear no man or woman.
And the M is upside down because it's the W. That's the latest venture, right?
That is the latest Jake Paul venture. It is a men's personal care line that is in every single Walmart in America.
Just Walmart, by the way?
To start, Walmart.
Okay.
Yes, it will expand from there to Target, CVS, etc. But it's had a beyond successful launch and will be a big part of Jake's platform going forward.
Yeah, and you've announced Sean O'Malley's a part of it.
Sean O'Malley's a co-owner. Ruby Rose is a co-owner.
And there's like some other faces that are blurred out.
We'll be announcing 3 or 4 other meaningful co-owners to that as well.
No truth to the rumor that Helwani's a co-owner. There's been some.
Listen, man, you stack a lot of W's. So you're already an owner in that regard.
Last question, and I hope you don't mind me asking this.
Yeah.
But we talk about the brother dynamic. I know you lost your brother, and I know everything revolves around him, right? That you named your company in his honor. Your son is named in his honor, and I'm just wondering, when you have these moments, these W's, if you will, these successes. When I see you talk about him on social media and how everything is for him, and you go visit him and where he's resting. If I could just ask, like, why he is such a presence in your life, in your life, and what he means to you, because I know you lost him at a young age.
Yeah, look, we grew up very rich until I was like 5 years old, and then we fled Iran because of the revolution, and then we were very poor for a long period of time, and we were rough kids doing rough things, and I believe he saved my life by giving up his life. So I always feel grateful to him for the sacrifices he made, and I will honor him till I put my head to rest, right? And I hope he always knows that I'm always thinking of him no matter what, and he's never forgotten. It's, 30 plus years, 32 years that he passed away, and he's a part of our lives every single day. Far bad, Bidarian.
Well done.
Thank you.
Well done. Good luck to you guys, July 20th. Looking forward to it. Good luck on November 15th and with everything that you guys are doing. Well done as well. There he is, Nakisa Bidarian, an interview 4 or so years in the making. Where are you going? Where are you going? I'm saying goodbye. What are you, such a rush to leave? You got a plane to catch or something?
I do, yes.
Oh, you do? Okay, sorry. You actually do.